go. All right, we're recording. Okay. Okay, so this is day 7 of 10. We're just like plugging right along in this class. Everybody's here. Jessica's dog is making an appearance as always. Very sweet. So we're going to start with the shadow exercise. I promised I was going to be more diligent about this week. So I want you to go ahead and dim your lights and create whatever kind of shadow situation you need to. Grab your sketchbooks and grab your pencils. I'm going to set a timer. Okay. So go ahead and put your eyes on your shadow situation. And for 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to look and write about what you see and be attentive to any shifts that have happened over the past however many days. 3 minutes begins. Right. 9. Okay. How is this? Is this getting harder? Yeah, a little bit?
My shadows disappeared for a few days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I've been reflecting a lot on that.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. That becomes an opportunity to contemplate. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think that this is, I do think that this is a little bit tricky, but it's good exercise. Okay. I am going to make you guys bigger. And I've got my camera, my sort of workspace camera happening right here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that screen bigger because I want to show you. Let's see, make that small. I want to actually show you some books that I have in the studio that I have made over the years and that are similar to what we're going to be working with. So let's see. Okay, so an accordion book is essentially one long fold that creates pages. So as you can see here, I've got like one long piece of paper and I've just folded it into even sections. And with this particular setup, I actually stitched in the center to this folded paper cover to create this container. Okay, so I can open it up and I can read the book, kind of like a traditional book, just turning through individual pages. But I can also open it up and have it become kind of a sculptural element. This is probably the most similar model that I have to what we're going to be doing because there's not a hardcover and there's stitching involved. But it is kind of like an unusual shape. Like it's kind of this like long, I'm not actually sure why I made this shape. I think I was actually just trying to do something unusual. But it's kind of like this long, thin shape right here. So the model and the structure is very similar to what we're doing, but the dimensions are actually quite different. Let's see. This is a hardcover accordion book. And I made this one quite a while ago. And this one opens up to kind of one continuous book. But notice here, if you look at the sides of my pages, you see how they kind of make those little peaks. This was actually not one long piece of paper that was folded. Like each page was separate and I worked on it individually and then I glued them together after the fact. And so that is kind of a really interesting approach because it gives you the freedom to sort of like work on your pages individually. Like I can work on this page or this page or this page, and then I can actually sequence them however I want, fold them, glue them, and then do that. When I make like one continuous fold, the pressure's kind of on because then you have to, to a certain degree, you have to kind of like start here. Like I can't like reorder these like once I've started. So that's like a bit of a difference between the two. This was a demo I did, and you can see I was like talking too much while I was working it, so it doesn't actually sit flat. But it's basically one accordion fold that has two hard covers. And the long fold is actually just glued inside. And so the book itself, it's kind of hard to see with the light here. The fold itself is actually just glued into this. Okay. So this is similar to that other model where my pages are actually glued together. You can see at the top. I've got a hardcover, but notice on the inside, I've got actually my pattern paper. So this was a pattern that I made when I was demonstrating actually what you guys did, what we all did yesterday. So this was a pattern where it was a light bulb pattern that I made where I carved the positive and I carved the negative, and I just kind of took turns printing them. But I had printed a whole page of patterns, and then I actually cut up a section of my pattern and used it as an inlay for my book. And I really just kind of liked the way that that looked. So when I opened my book, I have an inlay on the inside, and my whole book extends out. And on the back cover, my folds are actually glued on the inside. I didn't get around to actually putting anything in the pages yet, but it's off to a good start, I think. Another hardcover fold, one long fold that just attaches to a hardcover. And these hardcovers are made just by taking a board and wrapping it in paper. And then if I were to actually take this out, you would see this cover paper is actually glued to a stiff board inside here. But the book itself, because it doesn't have a spine, it actually opens from either side. Like it can just kind of fall open at any point, which is why it may be helpful to make what's called a belly band, which is what's here. And this is just a piece of paper that I've cut and measured and folded to basically create a little band that can be slid onto a book to keep it closed, or snapped open, just like that. So what I like about these is it's an opportunity to have like, another design element. Maybe like the title of my book could be here. Maybe this obviously this is a contrasting paper than this. So there's like a visual design element. This could be patterned, this could be not, this could be patterned, this could be not. So all those are options. And then I have these here, which are kind of like sort of oddball demos. But I actually think that we are going to do a version of this, but I think it's just kind of a cool thing to show teachers. When you're getting students to think about books, what you can do is you can actually make a book out of a single piece of paper. You fold it and you make a single cut and then fold it down. And then all of a sudden, a single piece of paper becomes a book. And it's a really great way to get students to sort of think about pages and space and sequence. And it's really also a nice idea to kind of like think about how imagery can be broken up over multiple pages. But I made this as a demo, and it's just a simple series of collages, like little things I had in the studio. I did some ink drawings. Inside. I kind of drew stripes over this whole thing and then collaged little bits of stuff. But then what it is actually just a single piece of paper and folded down. So you can see, I basically made this collage on this large piece of paper and then kind of cut and folded it in such a way that the whole thing becomes a book. The reason it's so difficult to see is because it's shiny. I actually, when it was a full piece of paper, I took packing tape and just put it across the whole thing on both sides. The back is just painted with some ink just to kind of give it some color. But there's packing tape on both sides, and that it almost like laminates the book, and it makes it a little more structurally sound. Like I can fold it and move it all around without it like breaking down now because it's covered in plastic. But this was a demo that I was doing for like the children's workshop that I was teaching for bookmaking. And everybody made their own books. And then we also all made books together. And so this is a collaborative book I made with the kids. So we all worked on this. Collage pieces. There's some kind of subtle ink painting here that you can't see. But if we open it up, here are all of our names. In the workshop was Henry, Flora, and Kristen, Brian, Fiona, and Claude. And there's like little drawings of everybody. So you can see Kristen looking very sweet, Flora with the smiley face. Henry's kind of difficult to see. Henry has kind of like a grimace on his face. Okay. Let me go back to gallery view. So those are just a few examples of kind of like what's possible with accordion books and simple book structures. As I mentioned, like this is probably the most similar to the book that we're going to make. But you know, the thing is, all of these are blank. Like all of these have no content in them. They don't have anything inside them. And so it's helpful to sort of like take a look at the structure, but I also want to show you some slides of like finished artist books. So you can start to get a sense of really like what's possible in terms of content and imagery and how things are sequenced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a slideshow that I put together on our course canvas, and I'm going to share my screen. So hang on 1 second. Let me get this in order. Oh, wrong class. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Can you guys see okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can see okay, yeah? Yeah, okay, good, all right. Okay, so what I've got here are some examples of artist books that I think just kind of illustrate the form really nicely. This is a book called Small Gifts by the Midwestern artist Karen Kunk. She's a printmaker and teacher based in Nebraska. And she's just kind of done it all, like over the years. She sort of has developed her own vocabulary of imagery that she just uses and reorganizes. A lot of biomorphic abstraction, abstract shapes based off of abstract shapes based off of nature. and really beautiful color and print application. But what I really like about her work is how fluid her imagery is. And so she can actually make a single piece that's maybe medium size, but she'll also make large work on paper that might be like, maybe 10 panels all put together to make like almost a large mural. And then she'll make a very small book like this piece that could fit in the palm of your hand. Notice the piece itself, it's open in the slide, and we're sort of only able to see kind of half of it, but it doesn't have a distinct middle, beginning, and end, and it can be kind of read multiple directions. So visually, we start at the left and work our way to the right, but it's got this dark cover, this dark image on the left, a dark image in the center, and a dark image on the right. And this shape, I think, relates to this shape, and it sort of relates to this shape, what we can see of it. And so to me, that suggests that this is a book that can be read multiple ways, because these seem to be kind of like page breaks or chapter breaks that are sort of interspersed throughout the pages. So I think that that's pretty interesting. This is another beautiful piece by Karen Kunk. And you can see she has a texture here that almost appears to be like cracked earth or cracked grass. But notice these like abstracted cloud forms that are printed at the top. Here, she actually is printing or putting down this orange in the negative space. The negative space here creates a cloud form, and that actually moves right on top of this texture she has here. So this cloud shape extends across both pages, but the line work changes from one page to the next. So I think that that's really interesting, that she basically has one kind of drawing here, another kind of drawing here, but then she has this shape that extends across both. And so that links them. It links both pages, like they become joined in that way. And it appears, looking at the top of her book in the slide, that that orange shape actually moves its way across the surface of all of the pages. And so that's kind of another interesting idea about artist books, is that you can have information or imagery or text on individual pages, but you can also have this other motif that is moving across the whole thing. Also notice she's got an accordion fold here, and it's unfolded and sort of turned, positioned to reveal this like one page right here. But this whole thing could be folded up, and then it's enclosed in like a threefold cover, which I think is really interesting. And she has like some interesting patterns kind of attached to the back. Another Karen Kunk. There's a cover here, and her accordion opens up, comes all the way out. Okay. This is a historical book that I wanted to show you, and it's actually very similar in orientation and scale to that small book that I had earlier, the one that I said was very similar to what we're doing. This is a Buddhist prayer book, and it's one single page that's been folded, and it's actually bark that's been drawn on with ink. So it's bark that's been flattened and dried and made into paper, and then carefully folded. And notice we're looking at it in the correct orientation. So rather than the pages moving left to right, like they do in Karen Kunk's work, the folds actually move top to bottom. And so we can actually look at each individual page, or we can unfold the whole book going top to bottom and create one continuous image. There's this beautiful illustration of this kind of like decorative motifs, like the dragon tail or the chicken tail, sort of the tail of the figure here, that kind of moves and flows from one page to the next. But there's like a different creature on every page. So it's almost like this is the information that shifts from one page to the next, and this is the information that links one page to the next. It's not very large, and it's very old and very fragile, and it's not like it's dozens and dozens of pages. But I like this example because it shows you really what's possible with this form, and it kind of shows you another way of reading, which is top to bottom, something we're not necessarily used to thinking of. Here's a similar example, another historical example, Buddhist Tantra prayer book. And so 3 different diagrams of the figure in states of prayer, in states of ecstasy. And once again, we're reading from top to bottom. Similar scale where the width of the pages is much wider than the height. And when unfolded, the height is significantly larger than the width. And so that's an interesting relationship, that the book is taller than it is wide when it's open, but it's wider than it is tall when it's closed. This is a sweet piece by Louise Boyd. So again, tall, thin pages, one long accordion fold that attaches to a cover here. And she has this kind of space motif inside, this repeated swirly forms, almost sitting on top of what looks like a landscape. There's a figure here, and then as you turn the pages, we see more and then less of the landscape. But notice her sky motif kind of moves across different pages. And so it's like this grouping of circles kind of extends over the side. But what I also really like about this is that the artist has cut into the pages. And so you can see in the shadow, the book itself actually casts holes, cast shadows like onto the ground, and the shadows mimic the imagery. And I think that that's very interesting, especially considering our shadow observations we've been doing. But what this does is that, you know, there's imagery that's intended to be read 1 or 2 pages at a time, kind of like a traditional picture book. But then there's also the sculptural quality to it that, like, when it's set up in this orientation, it casts its own shadow. And the shadow really becomes like a part of the piece. I like that quite a bit. Also, there's a cool leather strap over here that she probably uses to kind of wrap the whole thing up when it's closed. This is a really simple piece called Inky Squares by Zoe Karamia. And what I like about this is it just shows you how simple of an idea a book can really be. I mean, it's just basically a series of overlapping squares that are farther apart, closer together, get farther away from the viewer, come closer to the viewer, move back again, and so on and so on. And it's really just playing with the repetition of form. And so we read this just from left to right. We can kind of read it 1 page at a time, or we can look at the whole thing at once. And it's just this shape that kind of goes on this long walk all the way back into the sense of space, back close to us, the sense of space. And it really just becomes like a story, you know, the story of this kind of like bustling, inky shape just moving back and forth. And it's so graphically strong that I think that it really has significant impact even in reproduction. But I love the simplicity of this. Sometimes when we're looking at like, I always find like when I'm looking at like a Karen Kuntz book and there's all this elaborate stuff and kind of like one image sort of printed over another image and the tops and bottoms of the pages are folded and da-da-da-da. What I like about this is it just reminds me just how simple a book can actually be. So speaking of simple, these are accordion books by the expat artist Etel Adnan, who is Syrian-born but been living and working in America for many years now. She's a painter, a textile designer, and also a writer and a poet. And her books are these really interesting objects where she kind of brings everything together. She will use designs from her textile work. She will use paints or watercolors and kind of like her characteristic color palettes and things like that. And she'll also include small bits of her poems, written both in her native language and her native script, and also in English, her second language. She sticks to a pretty traditional format. She has one long fold that she works back and forth on. And often the books are double-sided, so there may actually be kind of imagery on the back of the folds, as well as imagery on one side of the other side of the fold, or what's called the recto and the verso. The recto is the front and the verso is the back. But you can see this nice combination of fluid gestural watercolor and these kind of large handwriting, her own words sort of appearing in handwriting of different levels of formality and also scale. I love this Etel Adnan piece, which is actually just black and white. She takes color out of the equation and includes some of her handwriting, but also just these wonderful little notational marks. And notice that she kind of has a similar format as the Buddhist Tantra books, where the book is taller than it is wide when it's closed, but it's wider than it is tall when it's open. Another beautiful little Etel Adnan book. And then here you can really see that combination of the Arabic script that she writes in, her color schemes, and her painted imagery. And this is actually a book about mountaintops and writing about various mountains that she's been to or seen in her life. And so these little abstract ink drawings become these mountaintop peaks with these written descriptions of them sort of happening kind of around and on top of them. It's a very subtle effect, but notice how the stripes move over a fold, but then they stop at the other fold. So the stripes link this page to this page, and this becomes kind of like one set of pages. But then just by changing the color of the stripes, she makes a distinction between this set of pages and this set of pages. So, these two pages relate to this mountaintop, and these two pages relate to this mountaintop. Actually, I'm going to find, let me show you a little bit of Etel Adnan's work. I like her work. I like artists who actually work in more than one format, because you really get a sense of how their minds work. And so this is like a very characteristic painting of hers. They're not very complex. I mean, they are and they aren't. Like the paint handling isn't very complex. She actually does a lot of her painting with a palette knife, and often the work takes the form of landscapes that are geometric and very simplified. Like she might include like a moon that's just like a simple circle against like a purple background. But she also, works in these book formats, and she does these almost like installations of her books that I find really interesting. I'm looking. Well, here's one of her exhibitions. So you can see her paintings on the wall and then her books on the table. Let me try searching one more thing. Yeah. So she will do these interesting pieces where there's actually shelves on the wall, and she will have multiple accordion books on the shelves open. So it's almost like, it's like a bookshelf, but all the shelves are open, and this singular book expands the length of the shelf. I just find that to be really, really beautiful. She also displays her books in more traditional formats, like under glass, open, with the folds displayed. It's a much simpler piece by her. Just singular strokes, probably based off of letter forms. Okay. Oh, got two people who are waiting to be admitted. Here they are. Okay. Hey guys. Sorry, I was screen sharing. I didn't see you there, but you're back now. So anyway, so those are some examples of artist books who make use of the imagery inside their books. And I just kind of I want you guys to sort of just like take those and just be thinking about them, just like all the ways to sort of use the page and the kinds of things that can go inside of a book. I always say this, if I had to make only one form of art for the rest of my life, I would make books, because they can be like anything. They can be story, they can be abstraction, they can be sculpture. I feel like they kind of relate to film. You know, like when you read a book, you're turning the pages, and like when you're looking at page three, what you see on page three is directly informed by what you saw on page two and page one. And so it's like the book kind of builds a story in your mind. And I also, something that I really like about books is that they do something that not all forms of art can do. Um, if you think about like a mural in a public space that's on the side of a building, like that is a painting, that's like a visual image that can be seen by many people at the same time. So it's kind of like a painting that works like a movie in a movie theater. It's like everybody is seeing it at the same time, and that's great. Like, you know, I love like kind of big public work like that. But like a crowd of people can't really read a book at the same time. Like books, the form of a book, um, it's really like a one-to-one correspondence. And um, this came up the other day when I was saying this to Jessica about the printing and the carving. Like I really actually think you can't deny your nature. And as much as I love sort of like large public work, I actually think as an artist, it's much more in my nature to make things that are much more intimate and quiet and kind of communicate on a one-to-one scale. And so I really love the capacity of a book. Like really a book can only be read by one person at a time. So it's this work of art that it's like you and the thing, you know, it's not like a whole group of people in the thing. And I really like that intimacy that happens between a viewer or a reader and a book. I also am just a big reader. So, you know, I love to read. I certainly love to paint and draw, and I love that this form can kind of bring all these things together. So I have a big fondness for books. So that little slideshow that I just put together, that is on Canvas. It's there if you want to revisit it at any point. And I recommend looking into any of those artists. I mean, they're all really cool. Etel Adnan is, you know, she's got kind of one of these wonderful stories where she's just been sort of doing her thing for her whole life. And at the age of like 86, all of a sudden it's like she's getting all this attention for her painting, for her books, and for her poetry, which is just really wonderful. And so she's enjoying this kind of like late in life, like widespread success. That's just wonderful. But I like her work quite a bit. So are there any questions about anything that I just showed you before I start to get into demoing and bookmaking?
I would be really interested in knowing how you do, because I make books already, but I would love to know how you do the hardcovers at some point. I don't know if you can in this class. I don't know. It would just be really cool.
So yeah, I don't know that I can in this class.
Okay.
Because what I wanted to do was to make sure that everybody was on the same playing field, and there was no way to like the glue is just like kind of complicated.
That's what I'm like. That I've tried many times and I fail. Well, I mean, I don't fail, but it just doesn't turn out the way I want because of the glue.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been interested in. But that's no. I mean, not that. Sorry. Never mind. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's cool. No, it is cool because like there is something just kind of magical that happens. Like when you have like a soft cover book, that's one thing. But as soon as you put like a hardcover on a book, it just kind of becomes this other thing. It has like this other quality. And in my experience, people really are into that. So I don't know. Let me see if I can find a really good video. I personally haven't made any videos myself. Or maybe when we do our one-to-one meeting, like I can actually sort of talk to you about it and kind of make some recommendations for that.
Okay.
But I will say with this, you can do some really interesting things with soft covers, which I will show you in this class. So we're not going to knock the soft cover. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, I am going to pin my workspace video and make that really large. Okay. And I'm going to move this so that you can see it. And I'm going to start demonstrating this. And I'm going to ask that if somebody drops out or gets kicked out, like basically I'm not going to be looking at the screen very much. And so just now when I was talking a whole lot, I did not know that Isaac or Ayana were not in the class. So if someone gets kicked out, just yell over me and just let me know, and I can kind of let them back in. I've tried 6 ways to Sunday to figure out how to remove this waiting room, and it's not happening. So just don't feel bad about kind of talking. Okay. I've got a piece of paper here. And I've got mechanical pencil, bone folder. Let's see. I've got my 18-inch ruler. And I've got my X-Acto knife or scissors. And my paper is a little bit smaller than yours. It's 14 by 17. And so I'm gonna actually try and kind of keep it as close, keep this demo as close to the other one as it would be for you guys. But just keep in mind that your paper is a little bit larger. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cut this into 2 strips. Because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna join multiple accordions together to make one long accordion. You don't have to do this, but I think in watching me do this, you will sort of understand how to do it if you want to and how not to if you don't want to. So I want 2 strips of even height, and I'm gonna work on my short side. I'm just gonna go ahead and measure 5 inches up from the edge on both sides. 5 inches up from the edge on both sides. And I'm gonna make a little mark at the corner, which you can't see, but there's 2 marks on either edge. And what I can do is just use my X-Acto to cut all the way along. And I end up with my 5-inch strip of paper. Here we go. And I'm just gonna go ahead and use this piece as a template to cut my next piece. Lay that right on top. And use this as a template to cut my next piece. So I end up with 2 strips, 5 inches tall, 5 inches tall. Mine are 17 inches long, 17 inches long. And these are going to be the interior folds of my accordion, okay? So this is the part that can get a little bit tricky. It may be tempting to say, okay, I want 2-inch pages, so I'm just going to measure out 2 inches and fold, 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 fold. But inevitably, if you do that, like the whole thing, it's like you may start with like 2 inches here, but by the time you actually kind of get all the way here, it's like your measurements kind of change, and then your accordion like isn't really super precise. So here's what I like to do. I like to, oh, we lost Isaac. Here's what I like to do. I like to work with the whole fold and actually kind of fold it down and sort of let the width of the pages be what they are. So I'm going to take my whole paper, I'm going to fold it down. And kind of press down. And for all of my folds, I'm going to use my bone folder to help press my folds. And I'm going to put a piece of scratch paper down. And I just run my bone folder, like the long side, just over my fold. And that just makes a real nice crease. From here, I'm going to go ahead and fold this over. Set it right on top. Fold this over. Right on top. And I can open this up, and I'm going to bone these sides down so that they are nice and creased. Okay, and so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I can stop here, but what I would like to do is actually divide each one of these in half, which is going to double my amount of pages. So I can fold this one in here. Make a fold, bone it down. I can fold this one to here. Okay. I can make a fold, this one to here. this one here. Okay. And so notice that in kind of folding that, it's not really a zigzag, but that's okay because my folds are really evenly spaced. So what I can now do is go back and condense the whole thing to just become a zigzag, right? As long as my creases are evenly spaced, it's pretty easy to kind of convince them to go one way or the other. So I'll just go through and fold it so that it is a zigzag. And then I'll just take the whole thing, put it under a scratch sheet, and bone it down. So here's my zigzag. Now this gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages, but I want more. So that's where this comes in. I'm going to repeat that process, make another one of these, and then join them together to make a 16-page interior. So fold the whole thing in half. Okay, so here we are. Got my 4 big pieces, and I've actually folded my outer edges in. So now I've got to fold these interior ones in. Those are the ones that are tricky. Okay, here we go. I've got all my folds, but it's all kooky. So I can kind of condense it to be an accordion, fold the whole thing down. Bada boom. So, what I want to do is to actually join them here. And notice, like, here are my ends. I want to make sure that the two ends that I'm joining, like, make a V, like, come together, right? And let's see. On this side, on my ends, my covers are going to be here, kind of like hold this side in. And so I want to actually make sure that I'm joining on the inside of the V, on the inside of the V. So I don't want to join over here, I want to join back, okay? I'm going to go back to that remaining strip of paper that I have, and I want to cut a piece that is the same height as my accordion, which is 5 inches, and maybe 1 inch wide. So I'm going to cut a strip 5 inches. So this should be the same height as your accordion, right? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to shave off just a little bit. I'm going to shave off like maybe 1/8 of an inch because I actually want it to be just slightly smaller than the height of the accordion, but just slightly, just slightly. So I'm going to shave off like 1/8 of an inch, like a really thin slice. So it's just a little bit shorter than the height of my accordion. Then I'm going to top and a bottom. Okay. This is going to be the piece that I will actually use to join these two. So I'm going to get a scratch piece of paper. And I'm going to grab my glue stick. And I'm just going to go ahead and put glue on this, all on the back surface of this. Here's a little trick. I've got to move my hand and kind of hold this down so I can glue this down here. But I don't want to get glue on my fingertip because I don't want to glue my book. So I'm going to use my knuckle. So you hold your knuckle. See that? Stuck to my knuckle. Basically, I'm just going to glue these together. I'm going to use my glue-free finger to hold them in place. And I'm going to position my tab on top. I will just put my scratch paper down and use my bone folder just to really glue it down. There's a little bit hanging off the bottom right here. My tab is just slightly too long. It kind of expanded a little bit when I put the glue on it. So I'm actually just going to take my straight edge, trim that. I'm going to use my scratch paper to make a nice crease in that tab, going the right direction. And there we are. So 16-page full, and it's been joined in the center by a tab. Okay. Switch back to gallery view. Now, let me ask, are there any questions about what I just did? Did that make sense? Yeah? I mean, the big two things to remember about this process is that I really recommend cutting your long strips and then folding the whole thing, like kind of like working with the strip and sort of folding it back and forth, folding back and forth, sort of folding in the middle and then folding into quarters and then folding into eighths. And like, that's like the width of the pages that you end up with, they'll be very even. And it's just an easier way to go. Trying to actually fold back and forth, inevitably they end up kind of getting a little bit wobbly and things like that. And then the other thing is that if you want more pages, you can join multiple accordions together, okay? And so I've given myself 16 pages here, but let's say that I want, like, I don't want 16, I want 14. What I can do is give myself more than I need. 1, 2, 3, 4, actually, let's go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And like these are unnecessary. What I can do is I can just trim them after the fact. So I just take my straight edge and position it right along the crease. Just trim it down. So there's no law that says that your tab that joins multiple folds together has to be in the middle. Okay. If you want 14 pages, you might have to make 16 and then cut it down. I do think it's helpful to have an even number. It's not necessary, but it's helpful to have an even number. But if you have an odd number, just keep in mind that, like, if I had cut this off, then my last page will be going in the opposite direction than my first page, which again is not a big deal. It's just sort of something to be aware of. Okay. So there we go. Okay. So what I want to do is talk about how to create a cover and a fold, and also to stitch the accordion inside. And I think in order to do this so that you can see it on this format, I'm going to use a contrasting color paper just for this part of the demo, just so you can see it. If you yourself have contrasting paper in your studios, in your studio spaces, and you want to use a different kind of paper for your cover, by all means, you can also use the same kind of paper for your cover, by all means. I'm going to use a different color one just because I think visually, I'm noticing that the whites are really washed out, like on Zoom. So I think it's going to be helpful for you guys to see another one. So let me grab that other paper. All right. Okay. So I've got this kind of really bright yellow paper here. The thing that I want to be sure of is that the height of the paper is taller than my book, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and put my book down on my page. I'm going to put them next to each other. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to eyeball like the height of my cover, okay? So I'm going to use my example here. So inside your cover, you want a little bit extra, like you want your cover to be slightly larger than the height of your book. So notice that little bit of extra here. And also that little bit of extra here. That extra space, that's referred to as the square. So you want your square to be a little bit larger than the height of your book. And how much larger is truly a personal decision. I like a fairly tight square. So when I'm positioning my book on top of itself, I'm just going to eyeball where that square is, okay? So I just kind of visually set it up and say like, oh, that looks good. And then I want to cut my cover material so that I have the same amount of square at the bottom. So I will put them next to each other, and I will place my pages next to it. I'm visually looking to see what the square is, and I say, okay, I want that same amount of square at the bottom. And I'll make a little mark. And then what I like to do, rather than use a ruler to do this, I just take a spare piece of paper, just any piece of paper in the studio, and I put it next to the cover material, and I transfer my mark onto another piece of paper. So here's the height of my square. I made a little mark here, and I made it once I had my book sitting on here. I took my book off. Now I have a spare piece of paper, and I'm just transferring that measurement onto my spare piece of paper. So I've got like a little tick mark there. And I'm just going to take that spare piece of paper and put it onto the other side of my cover material. And I transfer my mark. So I have two marks here. I've got one right there, and I've got one on the other side, and they're both at the same distance. So that when I lay my ruler across and cut, I'm going to cut a strip that is the same height all the way across. I didn't do a very good job with my cut. I kind of didn't line up my marks, so let me just trim that down. Here we go. So this is the material that I'm going to use to measure and make my cover for my book. Okay. I want to have a flap that opens before I open my cover, before I pull out my accordion. So I want a cover here and a cover here. Okay. Which means that I need like 1, 2, 3-ish book lengths of material all the way across. So I do not like to measure like my book and then transfer that measure down here with the ruler. I just find that to be like too cumbersome. What I much prefer doing is actually just putting the book on top of my cover material and then just visually like doing it that way. I just find that I don't have to deal with math or numbers or rulers or any of that. It just makes things easier. So I'm gonna place my book on my cover, and in placing it, I'm making sure to give myself that little bit of extra square all the way around. And I'm just going to take my mechanical pencil and make 2 marks on the inside of my cover. There's 1, And there's two, just 2 marks. And I'm going to take my bone folder, put my ruler across my marks, and I'm going to take the tip of my bone folder, and I'm going to score my paper. You actually just take that tip and you're pressing down, and that makes like a little line in the cover that then just really easily allows you to fold the paper. Fold my cover over, bone that down. And what I've got so far is that first kind of fold for my book. Okay. And I use the width of my book to get to it. Now here's a little thing here's a little trick that we're going to do. We're going to do this just for this demo. I wasn't planning on doing this, but now that I've gotten started, I actually think it might be necessary, but I think it's very cool. So again, I am going for this 3-fold, but this book, if you look at the side, my cover, it's just folded straight on either side, so it's very thin. But my accordion here is really pretty thin, like it's just not that big. My accordion here, it's much thicker, you know, because it's large. So what I want to do is actually make a little spine for my book. I'm going to fold this into my paper, okay? So in order to do that, I put my book down and I made my little tick marks to find my first fold. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stand my book up. And I'm going to make some tick marks to measure the width of my pages. So I'm taking my book and I'm bringing the cover up and I want to measure like the width of the pages. Because what I'm basically going to do is actually make a second fold right here that's going to create like a really tiny spine. So I put my pages in my book, I fold my cover up, and I'm looking to basically measure that distance right there. So I can measure that distance right there, make a little tick mark. What I'm going to do is, rather than trying to make 2, I'm going to transfer that distance down here. I'm going to score. And I'm going to lift my cover material. fold that down. So this is what I end up with. See that? I've got kind of like a tiny little spine for my book so that when my accordion is sitting in there, it has like a little bit of a weight. Now the last thing to do is to actually measure for my flap, measure where my fold is, and then cut, because obviously I have more paper here than I need. I need to measure where that's going to fold it over, and then cut it. Okay? So what I could do, again, I'm going to put my book right in my fold, fold the cover around it, and then make 2 marks with my mechanical pencil. And I'm going to score once again. And then fold. So you see what I've got here? So what I could do at this point is actually just cut this, and then I would just have a regular tiny book with a tiny spine. But I'm going to keep on going because I want to make my fold. And because I've got my spine here, I'm going to want a spine there. So take my scratch piece of paper, and I'm going to measure the width of my spine. Actually, just lay this. I laid this paper on there, and I measured the width of my spine, put 2 little dots right there, and I'm going to transfer that measurement over to my next fold. Lay down my straight edge. Make my fold. So I now have 2 larger covers, a small spine, and then another small spine here. So that when I fold it all together, I get something like this. Okay, so last little bit. I'm going to put my book in the center panel, close the cover on it, and I'm going to close my book over. I'm going to flip the whole thing over. And I'm just going to make 2 little marks on the cover material so that I know where to trim this. And I'm going to trim. So here's my flap. And here's the cover of my book. And then here is my accordion on the inside. So I'm just going to draw these so that you can see them. I do think that they're difficult to see on the screen. See what I did? The cover material is basically 3 folds that make a little case that holds my accordion. And the width of my spine is equal to the height of my stacked papers, like kind of when I'm pressing them. Okay. Let's all get to that point before I start to talk about like sewing and physically like putting the pages in the cover, okay? Why don't we go ahead and like make our accordion fold and then cut and fold our covers. I am here to help with any issues that you may have, and I know that the measurements are really small and it's kind of difficult to see on screen, but I'm hoping that I think with me here, I think I can kind of like help you all through this, okay?
Ryan, how snug does it need to be, like when you're folding your cover over?
Could you say that again and speak up?
Yes. How snug does the actual cover need to be? So, like when you do the second spine for your cover, like this portion?
How thick does the cover need to be?
No, like how snug of a fit does it need to be on the second spine fold?
Oh, I see. So yeah, like the pages, like if I don't press on them, they're wider, and if I do press on them, they're thinner.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like what I do is I just kind of like gently press, like I imagine the book closed. Like I don't squeeze it, but I just definitely like close it down, you know? Yeah. And then that gives me a width and that like that I can work with. And I want my cover to be right on either side of that width. So fairly snug. So it's a snug fit, but it's a snug fit when I'm just kind of gently pressing the pages, not squeezing them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Guys, keep talking. I'm just making another cup of coffee, so keep talking. I can hear you. Okay, I need to just run and go and get more water. I'll be back in 2 minutes. So if you have any questions, just hold them. I'll be right back.
Hey, Alice or anybody, it's Shannon. Let me see if I can find my video. Sorry. Is there a required size for the paper, or are we just kind of doing it around the size that he did it?
I would imagine you could do it whatever you wanted to. I
Okay.
think you have to primarily think about the height that you want your page, and then the width just kind of creates itself as you're folding it in half repeatedly.
So we're making one similar to what he did, or we're just like sky's the limit. I didn't really get the requirement of the book.
I think it's kind of the sky's the limit.
Okay.
I mean, I think he wants us to make it in a similar style, but I think those specifics would be, he'd be open to whatever.
Okay. Thank you. Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
It's Shannon. Do we have to make the page? Do we have to fold the pages again to make them very thin like yours? Can we leave them wide?
No. Yeah. You can leave them wide.
Okay.
It's
My
up to you.
stamps are big, and then if I want to use my stamps,
Uh-huh.
I would want my pages wider. But is that going to mess up the idea that you have with the project?
No, well, the one that we're doing right now, it's just a demo. So this is actually however much or little you want to do of what I just did.
Okay.
This is just so you can kind of make a book so you can feel what it feels like. The next book you make will be the one that you're going to do like for real.
Okay.
That's so I guess this is a roundabout way of saying I don't really have any kind of specific ideas for this project other than you make an accordion book that is like
Okay.
finished and stuff. Yeah. Does that help?
That does. I don't have that much paper. I just realized I only had 3 sheets of papers, and so I'm probably not gonna spend a lot of paper on the demo. Can I use like just my scratch paper?
Yeah, to make a cover, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and you want to just keep the good paper for later?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna keep this good paper for the actual book, and then leave it wide like this if I want to use my stamps.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, I think I just created a scheduler in Canvas. It might be in your calendars on Canvas. Does anyone have their Canvas handy and they could check?
I'm not seeing it right this second, but I'm going to keep looking. Did you say you think it might be in the calendar?
Yeah. This,
I don't see it, but I got the email that it was created, but I don't see it anywhere on Canvas.
okay, let me see. Okay. Okay, let me go back to this.
So when I went to my Canvas, I didn't see it.
Uh-huh.
But when I clicked on the sign up for time slots in the email, it took me to the calendar and I can see it there.
You can okay, you did. Okay. I've not used this Canvas feature before, so I'm flying blind here.
And then when I click on it,
I found it on the calendar, but nothing happens when I click on it. Like it just takes you to the list and then it won't pull up the time slots or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. I think
same. I just see 8 a.m. on there.
yeah, I think I did it wrong. Hang on, I'm gonna do it again. Let me try it again. Appointment group.
Brian,
Yeah.
when we put the little tab on, you said to put it on the inside of the V or the fold?
Yeah. So it's like I put it on so it's like it would be under my hands as opposed to over my hands. So you'd want to put the V here as opposed to the V here. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then essentially, would that put it on the back or the front, like as you unfold? Although it could be both sides are usable anyway.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would be on the back, so it's like it would be the side that you look at less. Even when both sides are usable, I still find that like often one side is kind of more like the dominant side. It's like there's one side that you look at more, and so I usually just try and put the tab um, kind of on the less dominant side. Okay. Okay. I just tried it again, and I went ahead and made 20-minute appointments throughout 8 to 12 tomorrow. So and I just published it, so you should have gotten an email. And I wonder if you go to your email now, if you're able to sign up for any of those appointments.
I think I just did it. You just click reserve. I think I did the 9:20 time slot. Did you get a notification or anything if it worked?
Let me see. If I got a notification, I wonder where I would get that. I didn't get an email. But let me see.
On the calendar still where it says Wednesday, July 8th, it has from 8 to 11:40, and all of them say one available except the 9:20 says reserved that I just clicked on. So I think it worked. It
You
worked
did?
for me.
I also was
Okay.
able to click on one. I clicked on 8:20.
Okay.
And what's interesting is the only one that says reserved on mine is the 10 o'clock time that I chose, but like the 8:20, maybe at some point you'll have to accept it to make it look reserved.
Yeah. Okay. I see. Okay. I see that Ayana took 8:20. Gabrielle took 9:20. Alice, you took 10. Roxana, you took 10:20. That's what I'm showing. That's what I'm showing right now. Okay, so this is working. I didn't get a notification, but I can see it if I go to the right place.
How are you finding this? Or is it back in the Canvas?
Shannon, I'm going to share my screen and I'll show you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so here is the course canvas for our class. And what I did right here is I went to view calendar. And then tomorrow, Wednesday, the 8th, there's all these meeting slots. And because I'm the teacher, these are the ones that are taken and these are the ones that are available.
Okay.
But I wonder if you do something similar, if you'll be able to kind of get one through there.
Let's see.
Brian, I'm sorry. I know you just said this. The tab goes over or under?
It goes under. It goes under. So like, let's say your pages are coming forward like this, like these are the two ends. You want your tab to go behind your hands, like where my head is, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Shannon, were you able to sign up for an appointment using that method?
I figured out what happened. I was looking, so in calendar, it was showing me another class and I had a hard time figuring out how to switch classes, but I just figured out how to do that.
Got it, okay.
That's why I was confused. So I just got on it. So I'm going to click on 1040.
Okay. And I think what I will do is I'll just email out like a single Zoom link in the morning, and I'll just stay in that Zoom the whole time, and y'all can just, at your appointment time, just come in.
Okay. It's not letting me resume. It's not letting me reserve.
It's not.
Let's see. I'm sure I'm not doing something right. Let me see.
Maybe somebody has that time because we can't see what times have already been booked.
Oh,
I
okay.
couldn't figure out how to see. So maybe try a different time and see.
I thought I said it so you could, but
Shannon, I had just clicked 1040 right before you said it, so it's probably.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll try after that's 11. Is anyone on 11?
it doesn't look like it on my end.
Okay. It let me do that one. Okay.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, I see it, you got it.
All right. Thanks. There. There. Okay.
So how we doing? We're gluing pages, making covers. What are we up to?
Just started my cover.
Fabulous.
I'm in the same place. Yes.
Okay, all right.
I'm getting stuck with the spine part.
Yeah? Okay. Let's talk about it.
So I think I may have just like missed writing notes about it. I'm not sure, but so I got okay. I hope you can see this. So I got this part,
Huh?
and then I measured out like where I measured out a line right here to tell me where this was on this end.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what to do after this part. Like I'm getting confused.
So right now you've got two sections that are folded, the cover and the spine.
Yes.
Okay. So on the other side of the spine, you want to make a fold that is the same size as your cover. So
Okay.
let's see. I'm going to hold up on my screen. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is your end that you have right now in your hand. That's this.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got your spine, your thin spine, right?
Yes.
Then this is what's next. This section here is the same as this. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Okay. So basically, I have to fold this part in half. No, that won't work. I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get this middle part right here.
Uh-huh.
And every time I fold it, I don't know, I miss something. I'm like, when I fold this over, this width right here,
Uh-huh.
you know, because it's spongy. So
Uh-huh.
I'm having a hard time measuring it, like the width, I guess, the right way so that maybe that's what I need to do. I'm having a hard time basically knowing where to end, where to start here.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
It does. So I'm gonna make my screen large,
Okay.
and I'm gonna ask you to make my screen large too. Okay. So right? So here's the first cover that you folded, right here.
Mm-hmm.
Then here's your spine. The next part you want to fold is this middle spine, this middle cover. And so you want from here to here, that distance, it's the same as this, from here to here. So what you can do is you can take this measurement from here to here, and you can actually take that same measurement, transfer it onto a piece of paper, and then measure it out from here to here. Because this is like the front and back cover. Does that make sense?
Yes, I guess I don't know where to start on the other side of the spine. So I don't know how to get this middle part. I know that this to this is the same from here to
Hold it up
here.
to the screen so I can see. Okay. And hold it back so it's in focus, and you kind of take it from the top.
Can you see it?
I can.
So I don't know this part right here, this little line.
Oh, you're trying to get the spine.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's a different question. Okay, I'm gonna go back to my screen. Okay. All right, so you fold up, And then what I did, you see how my pages are spongy?
Yes.
Okay. So I just kind of press them down. I don't squeeze them super tight. I just kind of gently press them down. And then I moved my cover over so that it's touching. And I put all that on the table. And I just took my pencil and made a tiny little mark, basically measuring like where my pages were touching the cover. Okay. So I made a tiny little mark, and that gave me a sense of this distance right there. And I took that distance, transferred it onto a piece of paper, and I recreated that up here, and then I connected the lines, and then I scored it.
Okay.
Does that help at all?
I think so. So
Yeah.
when you,
Carol? Okay, so Carol is going to, I think Carol has something to add. Carol, what you got?
Well, I have a problem with the sponginess as well. So what I did was I took my ruler and I laid it down like this, like so your spine is like this. Your ruler looks like this.
Uh-huh.
You can draw your line and it keeps your kind of accordion intact, so you don't have to worry about the sponginess.
Yeah, yeah.
Like ruler and make your lines. I don't know. That helped me a lot because I made one. That's why I was asking about the difference in between,
Mhm.
because my first one was too big.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
No, that's a good, I think that's a good method, just sort of using the ruler as a way to kind of not only compress the pages, but
Mhm.
also make the line for the spine.
Right.
Yeah. Jessica, is this helping?
I think yes, that was yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let me see if
Yes.
I
This is a challenge to explain over Zoom, of course.
yes. That ruler technique is pretty awesome.
That's the trick? Yeah, there we go. How we doing? Good? Okay. I think in like 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about the sewing, and I'm also going to make a belly band, like the thing that kind of wraps around the book, because I just think that would be like a nice touch. Um, and then I think that that will be it for the day. But I'll hang out for a little bit. That might take us through the end because I'm going to try and explain it, but I can hang out for a little bit if anyone has any questions. But yeah, let's go ahead and do that in just about 5 minutes. So get to a place where you feel like you can kind of do the next thing, or at least kind of give your full attention. I'm going to run to the restroom really quick. Right. Okay, you guys there? Yeah? All right, I'm gonna go ahead the next part. So go ahead and make my workspace video large. All right. So here's what I've got. I've got my pages, my cover, my flap, there's my pages, there's my cover. I've also got my flap here. And so notice that my back flap, it's like the same size as both of my covers. I actually want this to be slightly smaller than this so that I can kind of grab it and open it easily. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna trim a bit off of here. I can eyeball this, maybe like a 1/4 inch. So you see now, it's actually slightly smaller. And then what I like to do is actually make rounded edges. And I have found that really the easiest way to do this is just to take something that's round and actually put it on top and just trace that round circle. So I'm just taking a little bottle of paint right here, which is the closest thing I had that was round. And I just trace that outer edge. See that? Just to create like a little guide for me to cut it. And this works with like, you can use like a penny, any kind of coin, really anything that's round. But I find that easier than just trying to like eyeball a round circle. Get my scissors. So here's what I have. Got my nice little round corners, which is nice. Just a nice touch. Okay. So in order to attach my pages to my cover, I'm going to actually sew. And so for this, you'll need your needle and your linen thread. And I sent everybody some linen thread, and you should have enough to make like a couple books. But this, I mean, the linen thread is kind of, it's, you know, it's a special thread. It's made for bookbinding. Any thread will work, but I like the linen thread because it's kind of nondescript and it's strong and it's thin. But the thing is, we want to actually know exactly where to punch our pages and our cover. And so for that, you'll also need to, we're gonna go ahead and make a template so that we know where to punch. And you're gonna need your awl, your AWL. Now, did you guys get this for in your kit? We didn't do this? Okay. So that means we're gonna, so rather than an awl, we're actually just gonna use the needle to make the punch, which is fine. I think that like, I didn't want to have you guys buy like a tool that was like $8 for something that we're literally gonna do just like twice. So all we really need is gonna be our needle and our thread. So I'm gonna grab mine, or actually I think I already did. Where are they? Uh-oh. Oh, we're back. Okay. So where you punch your book is actually totally up to you, okay? And it could be a part of your design. Like, let's say you want your book to open to the left. Like, our book will be closed. You open the cover, open this cover, and if you want your accordion to come all the way out, you could potentially sew your book to your spine on the last fold, like on the interior fold. Additionally, you could fold it in the middle or sew it in the middle so that the front half folds in and the second half folds in. And that's what I did with this one. This one unfolds 1, 2, 3, 4 this way, and it unfolds 1, 2, 3, 4 this way. So you see that? So I've got one accordion fold here, and it's sewed in the middle, which means it allows my book to completely unfold like this, but the cover is attached in the middle, okay? That's one way to go. I think this demo that I'm making now, just for variety's sake, I'm going to sew my cover so that when I open my book, the whole thing comes out and it's sewed at the end. Meaning my book, when it's standing up, the cover will be all the way on one side. I'm gonna go ahead and do that for variety's sake. So that means I need to make a template that's going to allow me where to punch. It's going to show me where to punch along this last spine. Here's the front part of my book, and then here's the part that I'm going to sew. I need a piece of scratch paper that is the exact same height as my book. So here's the height of my pages. I need a separate piece of paper that's the same height as my book. And do you remember earlier how I had 16 pages and I cut off 2 to make 14? Remember how I did that? What I did is I took those 2 pages and I actually cut one off. And so now I just have 1 page. And I'm going to use that last page as my template. I know that this is the exact same height as this because I literally cut it off here. Okay? So that's one way I can use, that's one way I can make a template is to actually cut off a page. Or I can actually just lay my book on top of a piece of scratch paper, measure out, and cut a strip of paper that is the same height. The width of your strip of paper is less important than your height. The height needs to be exact. The width can be whatever you want. But once I have a strip of paper that is the same height as my book, I'm going to fold it in half. Just right down the middle. And I can use my bone folder. And so now I've folded my strip of paper in half. And what I like to do is I like to take a pair of scissors and cut one of the corners so that one of the corners is trimmed and I know that that is the top. And so by cutting one of the corners, like becomes the top, this becomes the bottom. Okay? So once I've folded my strip in half, I've trimmed one of the corners, I'm going to open it back up and I'm going to fold the whole thing in half the other way. And then I'm going to fold the individual pieces back to the middle. And so this is what I've got. I folded it in half this way first, long ways. And then I folded it in the middle and then back to make this little W. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to fold the top and the bottom down towards these first folds. So I'm just going to fold them one more time. And so I have this piece of paper with many, many folds in it. It's got these folds here, but it's also got these other two folds here. See that? I'm going to open it back up, flatten it out, and keeping in mind that my edge with the cut edge is at the top, I'm going to actually label the intersection of the first fold, the intersection of the middle fold, and the intersection of the last fold. I will show you. So this is the one in the middle, all the way at the top, all the way at the bottom. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open up my needle. I have like a package of needles. I think you guys just have the individual needle. And I want to make sure that I'm punching the right fold. I'm going to go ahead and punch my holes in my accordion. I want to make sure that I'm punching in the right place. So I'm going to open my accordion up. I'm going to look for that tab where I joined them. And my tab where I joined it is back here. So I want that to be on the back. So I'm going to flip it over. And again, I'm going to punch on the last fold inside so that I can sew it all the way in the back so that when I open my book, it goes this way. So I just kind of mentally take note, like, which fold do I want? And I'm going to take my template and just set it inside. Again, it's the exact same height as my accordion book, so my template should just fit right inside. And those three holes are where I want to punch. So this is the tricky thing. Because I didn't have you guys get an awl, we're going to do our punching with the needle. An awl is basically a tool. It's like a needle on a And so it's a little bit easier to grip. You can do it, just kind of we just got to be careful. You're simultaneously going to hold your template and your book in one hand. And you're going to just put that needle right on the little dot right there. Make sure your fingers are on either side of the hole. And you're going to punch just right through. Luckily, you're only punching through 2 pieces of paper. You're punching through your template and you're punching through your accordion fold, so it's not like there's a ton of resistance. But if you hold that template in place with one hand, you can punch, punch, punch. And I just kind of position my fingers on either side of the back so I'm not punching into my finger. But I use that template to make my 3 holes in the section of the accordion that I'm going to sew. The next step is to use the template to punch the cover. Now this is going to be a little tricky to explain, so I'm going to say it a few times, and I'm going to say it and hold the book up to the camera just so you really got it. I punched on the last page of my book, right? And that means that I want to sew it all the way at the back of the spine, okay? If I was going to punch in the middle, if I was going to punch in the middle of my accordion, I probably would want to sew my template holes in the middle of my spine, right? So this is the space in your book where the edge of your accordion is sitting. And because I'm punching all the way at the back, I'm going to punch my holes on this line. That one right there. Not that one. That one. Because this is basically where the back of the book sits. If I was going to punch in the middle of the book, I would probably want to make my 3 holes in between my spine lines, right there. But because I'm punching on fold number 14, I'm going to punch back here. If for whatever reason I was going to punch it at fold number 1, I would actually make my lines here because I would want to sew my book to the front of my spine, but that would be pretty unusual. You're probably going to punch either in the middle of your spine or you're going to punch all the way at the back if you're sewing the last edge. Does that make sense? Got it. Good. Okay, so I'm going to take my template and I'm going to position it so that it is dead center on the correct spine fold. And remember, my cover is slightly larger than my pages. Therefore, my template will be slightly smaller than my cover. So I want to position visually my template so that it is right in the middle of my cover. And there's going to be a little bit of square on either side. And I can just visually make sure that my template's in the right place. And once I've got it in the right place, I'm going to repeat that motion that I did before, where I'm going to punch those 3 holes, just using my needle, and making sure that I don't punch my finger. Sometimes I'll take them out and I'll just make them a little bit bigger. So I've got 3 holes in my pages and I've got 3 holes in my cover. And I am ready to sew. Okay. Everybody has a little length of thread. You're going to need one, two, 3 times the height of your book, and then a little bit extra. Okay, I'm gonna do that again. You're going to need 1, 2, 3 times the height of your book, and then a little bit extra. So I'm gonna do like 3, I'm doing 3.5. I'll trim that. And I will thread my needle. These needles have pretty big eyes, so they're pretty easy to thread. Okay. When it comes to the sewing, with the 3-hole stitching, you're going to end up with these 2 little bunny ears on your knot. If you start on the inside, your bunny ears will be on the inside. If you start on the outside, your bunny ears will be on the outside, okay? There's no right or wrong way to do it. Bunny ears can be on the inside or the outside. I'm gonna put mine on the inside just because I like to conceal them, but you can have them on the outside. No right or wrong way to do it. Just remember that they're gonna be wherever you start. So if I start on the inside and go out, they'll be on the inside. If I start on the outside, go in, vice versa. Okay. So I'm going to position my pages and my cover so that my punched holes line up. And I'm going to start in the middle hole. And I'm going to sew from the inside out and pull my thread so that I've got 2 or 3 inches like left on the inside, like a little tail left on the inside of just like 2 or 3 inches. And then on the outside, I'm going to jump to the bottom and sew from the outside back in. So I jumped 1 hole and I'm sewing from the outside back in. And so here I am on the inside. I've got my leftover thread in the middle and my thread is coming out this bottom hole. And I'm going to jump over that middle hole all the way to the top and sew from the inside to the outside. So here I am on the outside at the top hole. And I'm going to come back to that middle and I'm going to sew back in through the middle hole and then through the middle hole in the accordion book. So what I'm left with is 2 stitches on the outside that meet in the middle, and then a long stitch on the inside that goes over the middle, and 2 strings on either side of that middle stitch. That's what I've got. 2 stitches on the outside that meet in the middle, a long stitch that goes over the middle, and 2 strings on either side of that middle stitch. That I will then tie around that middle stitch. Now you do want to pull it so that it's taut, but be careful that you don't pull it so hard that you tear the paper. That sucks. Like you do all this work and then you go to tie it and you just tear it. It's like nothing sucks more than that. I've done it many times. Don't do it. And in terms of tightness, you just want it to kind of snap. Like when I run my finger over the stitch, it just kind of snaps. That's good. You want it snap taut. And what I'm going to do is actually a square knot. I'm just going to go left over right, and then under, pull it down, and then right over left, and then under, and pull it down. Once I have my knot, I can take both of my threads in my hand, and I can trim them so that there's maybe a 1/2 inch on the inside. Little 1/2 inch bunny ears. And then I can just fold my book down, close my cover, close my flap. There we go. That's it. So that is what's called the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And as you can see, can you see? Make that bigger. Well, as you can see, my thread line is running along this back edge. My thread line is not in the middle of the spine. It could be if that's where I punch my threads, but I didn't want to do that because remember, I wanted to sew my book at the back. But your thread line could be right there in the middle if you wanted it. If you wanted to sew it in the middle. Okay. Gosh, it's 11:52. Do we have time? Do we have time for me to do the belly band? I can make it quick. Just a few extra minutes. Okay, let me do this last little thing. Okay, which is the belly band. So I'm going to take my pattern paper from yesterday. So here's my lightning pattern. And I'm going to cut a strip of it off. Go ahead and cut like maybe 3 inches. Inches here, 3 inches here. Here's my pattern paper. I gotta make my screen big again. pattern paper. I'm going to flip it pattern side over. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a fold a few inches in. Let's make a fold right here. And I can take my book and just rest it against that fold so that it makes a right angle, just like that. And I'm just going to actually begin the process of using my book to measure inside and make marks. So my book is sitting against my fold. I'm just going to turn that on its side so that my book is standing on its edge. And I'm making sure that my book is up against my material, my belly band material. And I'm just going to make 2 little marks. And I'm going to place my ruler on the 2 little marks, and I will use my bone folder to score. So here's what I have. I folded my belly band material to account for the width of the book. See that? And I just used the book itself to determine that width. And I want to repeat that process over here on this side. But first I need to trim this. So I'm going to cut that down. Just lay the book back down. Make the marks to measure the width of the book. Go. So there's that. So my belly band is flush with the edge of the book. I'm going to actually repeat that process on this side so I can wrap it around. And ultimately what I'm going to do is glue this to here. And so I'm going to actually trim this so that it's slightly less wide than the width of my book. So I'm going to trim a little bit off of here. Just like a, I don't know, like an 1/8 of an inch, a generous 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And I'm going to make a couple marks so that I know where to fold. And then once again, stand my book up and use the book itself to determine the width of the second side of my belly band. I try to err on the side of generosity when I'm making folds for my belly band, because the thing is, I actually want it to be slightly larger than the book, because this is a thing that's going to be sliding on and off the book, right? So I don't want it to be the exact size of the book, nor do I want it to be too tight. I actually want it to be just a little bit larger so that it can easily slide on and off. This is where I'm at. Got this. You can see that because I trimmed it, it's a little bit shorter. And I've got this. They're looking pretty good. With my belly band now wrapped around the book, I can make marks on where to trim it. And I'm going to go ahead and just trim a little bit extra off of that as well. And I am ready to glue. Flip that over. Okay. So I want to put glue right here and then turn it over so it fits right there. But I definitely don't want to get glue on my book, so I can slip a piece of scratch paper underneath so that my belly band does not accidentally get glue on my book. And I'm just going to use my trusty glue stick. Just put a band of glue right here. There we go. Just glue it down. Then I can slip out my scratch piece of paper and slide off my belly band. And I will just let that dry. And once that dries, it will slip right over my book. And keep it closed. Okay. That's that. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer at this point? No? Okay. As usual, what I'm going to do, once I end the meeting, the recording will start converting to an MP4. And then I will promptly upload the MP4 recording to YouTube and link it on our course Canvas so that all the demos, all the instruction, everything like that will be recorded. I made sure to enlarge my demo videos so they're very large on my computer. So by watching them you should be able to kind of get some sense of what I was doing through watching the larger video and also listening to me. But if any issues do come up, you can either email me, but if I don't hear from you through email, you can also just ask me any questions you might have tomorrow when we meet in our one-to-one meetings. At this point, has everyone been able to secure a space on the scheduler for their one-to-one meeting? Yeah? Yeah, okay. If you have not yet, go ahead and do that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna send out a Zoom link in the morning at like, 7:50. And I'll send it to everybody, but you can just log into that Zoom room for your meeting. And I will be just kind of in the Zoom room continuously throughout the whole time. If anybody has any issues that come up, again, don't hesitate to email. And it's very difficult. I don't know. I think that this is more difficult for me than other people. I really need to see it. So often a written description of what is the issue is, it's hard for me to imagine what it is. So if you do send an email, write out your issue and then send a photograph of it as well so that I can kind of, usually the combination of those two things I'm able to help, okay? If it's really bad, we can hop on Zoom tonight and I can kind of walk you through it. Sound good? Belly band, not required. It's just kind of a cool thing. If you want to do one, you can. If not, don't worry about it. Okay? All right, folks. I will see you individually tomorrow. And keep your eyes peeled for the videos. And happy binding. Happy folding, happy binding.
What, do we have a specific thing that we're supposed to accomplish tonight?
I would finish the demo book tonight. And if you're not done with the patterns, maybe finish up with those, just so they're like done and out of the way, so you can just focus on your artist book from here on in. Okay?
Sorry,
That's cool.
just so I understand. So tomorrow in our meeting, will you explain the requirements for the kind of final artist book?
Oh, well, the meetings, yeah, that's a good question. You're just making a book that uses the accordion format. And the subject matter is of your choosing. It can be related to the grocery store trip. It can be inspired by the grocery store trip. It can be something totally different from the grocery store trip. It can also incorporate any of the stamps, any of the patterns, or any of the collages. You can cut up the collages and use them. It's a place to kind of like make entirely new decisions, rethink some of the old decisions that you made. If you were unhappy with a piece, maybe you can make it into something else for the book. But basically the requirement is to make an artist book. Yeah. But I would love to strategize with you about how and why you want to do that tomorrow during your meeting. But I'm also interested, if you know what you want to do, I'm also interested in just talking about it with you and making sure that you have what you need in order to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You are so welcome. Good question. Good question. Anybody else? Okay. If we're good, I'm going to end the meeting because I know we're going past a little bit of time and I don't want to keep people late. But yeah, feel free to email me and I look forward to meeting with you tomorrow. And yeah, happy binding. Have a good rest of your Tuesday. That's what day it is. Yeah. Okay. Bye guys, I'm going to end the meeting.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome. See ya.